Hello, everyone. Hello, Renee.
Hello.
Ladies
How's
and
everyone
gentlemen,
doing
Renee
today?
Taylor.
It's nice to see you, Dan. How are you today?
Oh, I am good. How are you?
Doing well. How's the weather up in Northwest region today?
Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day up here in the north. It's a little bit cool. We're down, I think we're at just below zero right now, so it's a little cooler than it has been. I think we've had a pretty gentle kind of transition toward winter, so it hasn't been too bad. We got a little bit of snow recently, and in the outlying areas outside of Thunder Bay, there's been a little bit more snow than what we have here, but it's been pretty decent. How are things in the Northeast?
We're doing well. Uh, Milder days, so not too bad. We just have like a dusk of snow, like very light. So things are good here. Look at everyone already saying hello to us. This is fantastic. Hello to everyone that's joining us today on the Ask Me Anything. We're definitely going to be interactive and hopefully answering all of your questions. We have a lot to talk about today, really.
We
Hello,
do.
everyone.
It's nice being back on here with you, Renee. It's been
Mhm.
a while since we did one of these together,
It's
so
been
it's
busy.
nice. Yeah, it's nice having you. It's nice having you back and representing the North. Not that Sergeant Keys wasn't a great partner in crime.
You should have
In his
joined us today.
He could have joined us. He should have
Yeah,
joined
you
us.
should have joined us. He is a lot of fun. Hello to everyone. Just looking at some names, recognizing some names. This is fantastic. It's just been so busy. It's been so busy in the unit. Like
Oh,
we're hiring. We're hiring
well, and
recruits, we're hiring cadets, we're hiring auxiliaries, we're
there's just a lot going on within uniform recruitment. Like we have our new um, portal for applications now that's up and running since October 11th. So again, if you're applying to the OPP, make sure that you're going through the new portal and using that. It's hopefully it's going to be great for everyone, us as well as you. And there's a nice interface between the application and the back end of it where we have access and we have immediate access to all of the information that you're going to be uploading onto your files. So I'm really excited about that. Um, Mufasa, hey, thanks, Mufasa. I enjoyed. So Mufasa's just commenting on my latest podcast that I did with Sergeant Nick Keys. Super fun. Enjoyed the conversation with Nick. He's a really good person, and I enjoy my conversations with him for sure.
tell us a bit about your podcast for a couple of minutes, Dan,
So we've
viewers.
got, I think we've got five or six that are already pre-recorded that we're just kind of waiting to release now. I'm going to continue doing recordings over the course of the winter, and hopefully we'll build our season three beyond that. And like I always say, it's one of my favorite things to do. So I enjoy the conversations, and I learn something new every time I have a conversation with someone. So. I think there's a lot of valuable information on the career policing, and it's really interesting to see the diverse officers we have within the organization and their paths into their career of policing. So,
Just see some comments here just about some of you having deferrals and keeping your chin up and looking forward. Keep doing that. Understand that deferrals are not uncommon. Um, and staying committed, coming back more competitive. Your next process, we see it all the time. It's normal. You got to be at that competitive level, which we'll talk about throughout this hour. But deferrals are discouraging when they happen, but 12 months goes by so fast and there's so much opportunity to improve your file and come back the next time. So please stay positive. Please keep your chin up. We want you to reapply, and your dedication shows that as well when your applications come in.
It shows a lot of resilience and
Yeah.
motivation, you know, when you can when you can take that bad news and use it to develop and grow. On a personal story here within the OPP, I was in a process for another position in our training unit, and I'm unsuccessful in that process, and it's like really kind of broken me a little bit because I was really looking forward to it, and it's kind of a world I know very well, and I'm really interested in training. It's just something that I really love doing, and so I know what it's like to be unsuccessful, you know, in something that you really want and you feel like really fits and is kind of like the direction that you should be going. But it says a lot about your character when you can kind of like take that information and kind of take a good look at yourself, figure out where you need to develop and improve, and then move forward with that, right? So don't be discouraged. I mean, it's not easy, but don't be discouraged and use it as an opportunity for growth.
And
Me and
now
my
I get to do
personal
the AMA
stories
with
that I
you
always
today.
tell people. What's
And
that?
like, and now I get to do the AMA with you today.
Yeah.
So
Um, so
lucky us.
let's talk quickly, Renee. Let's talk about like what it means to be competitive. So some people get deferred. People get deferred for different reasons.
Mhm.
There are times that I've seen applicants who have applied to the OPP, and if they would have waited a month or two just to get a few more things settled with developing, they probably would have been more successful. So I guess the question is like, how when do you know when to apply, and when do you know when you're competitive?
It's true. You know, we always say apply at your competitive best. It's a word we use all the time, but let's take a minute to pick it apart a little bit with everyone. Competitive best means, you know, in whatever you're going for in life, but specifically with the OPP, you need to understand all the resources that are at your fingertips, right? Being your competitive best means you're doing what's required to understand what you're applying for. Um, every resource you need to apply for our process, we make available to you, whether it be through information sessions online, information sessions in person, events. I mean, look at the events that are coming up with OPP Bound and symposiums and all of those outreach events. You can do a lot of research just on www.opp.ca to find out more about the organization historically, presently, programs, all those kinds of things. And that's just the start, really. Wrapping yourself around our 10 areas of assessment, which you find out what those 10 areas of assessment are when you come to our events. When you wrap your mind around the 10 areas of assessment, that's exactly what we look at when you're coming through our process. And those 10 areas of assessment require a competitive level. So it's about learning those things, learning what those areas are, what we're looking at, and what our process is. It's really easy to tell when a candidate has come to these Ask Me Anythings, when they've come to information sessions, when they're at other events, speaking to recruiters, speaking to officers. Utilize the resources around you to learn about policing and those kinds of things. And when you come to an interview, fully prepared from the research and working towards those 10 areas of assessment, it really does show. It really shows from someone that's researched and done the work versus somebody that isn't familiar with that with the chart that we have for the areas of assessment. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense to me. I'm hoping that it makes sense to everybody
Yeah.
else, and I would echo everything that Renee has just said, and I, I think I think our 10 areas of assessment, like as simple as it sounds, like that's what they are. There are 10 areas of assessment. That is how we assess you. Those are the areas that we look at, right? So if you know yourself in those 10 areas, right, um, you're going to be more prepared for the process. So as you're writing your application, it's handy to have, some notes on yourself in each of those areas of assessment. I know, Renee, when you mentor people, you talk about this as well, as I do. Like, have a notebook and have a heading for each area of assessment and write honest, self-reflective notes on yourself in each of those areas. And that will tell you where you might need to develop, right? It might tell you where your strengths are. It might tell you where your weaknesses are in areas that you might need to develop, right? And then put that up against like 500 other people or 1,000 other people and ask yourself honestly, like, where do I think I sit if I'm in a competition with, 500 to 1,000 other people? Where do I think I sit as far as competitiveness? Okay, so those are things that will help you in our process, because those are the areas that we look at. So if you're strong, if you've done some homework and you've prepared in those areas, then when we start asking you questions in your application, in the paperwork that we ask you to fill out, and then in your interview, and then in your background investigation, when we ask you questions, then you already have the answers. You don't have to search for them in your memory. They're already down on paper. You've already read them over and looked for them, and they're already in your head.
When you look at our minimum qualifications, they're sitting here, right? So you have our minimum, and that's all available also on the website. You can apply with a minimum, but like Dan said, when there's so many other applicants, our competitive level comes in much higher, right? So you can have your minimum qualifications, but there's a good chance that if you're just at the minimum, because we have so many applicants, the competitive level's raised. So it's really good to understand what competitive level is. How do you know that? By coming to these sessions, by learning, by listening, talking with recruiters, and all of those things. Let's look at some questions.
So just going through a couple of the questions here. Aiden is asking about school references. If you're out of school for 5 years, you can use mentors or coaches. Can we use mentors or coaches even if we graduated? So we actually have stopped using the language of like educational references or school references. We consider them learning and developmental references now, because these references can come from a lot of different areas, right? Through COVID, some professors weren't feeling comfortable providing references for students who they had online, right? So these references kind of like, I guess, weren't always readily available. So we are talking about them as learning and development references, and those are people who can speak to your ability to learn, whether they're coaches, whether they're mentors, whether they're teachers, whether it's some type of a person at your place of employment who does the training for your place of employment, right? These are people that can speak to your ability to learn, right? OACP for OPP, not required, Amit.
There's questions here about auxiliary and cadet, and whether they're great development programs, and they sure are. We are definitely actively hiring. There's one that's asking about the cadet applications right now. They're closed right now, but we are hoping to have another class going through in the spring. So just stay tuned. As long as you're following us on social media platforms or reviewing opp.ca, you will see the updates of when outreach events are being open for registration. You'll see when the cadet programs open again for applications, those kinds of things. But follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever platforms you're using, follow OPP Hire, because we absolutely stay current and keep you in the loop. If there's something going on in our unit, like, we know right away, and so do you. We keep you fully informed. So please do follow us if you're looking to apply to the OPP. But as far as auxiliary goes and the cadet programs, Highly recommend them. I was an auxiliary back in 1999 for 2.5 years. Definitely built a foundation for my process and my learning and my development within the OPP. The cadet program as well. To have a 1 year developmental opportunity as a cadet with the OPP is huge. If you feel that you're still developing and want to try one of those programs, please do apply, look into it. Everything again is available online to learn about it. So if you have questions about auxiliary is volunteer and unpaid. You're doing usually about 13 hours a month with a 10-hour shift and some training. And as a cadet, those positions are part-time and full-time. There's opportunities depending if you're in post-secondary, super supportive of you reaching your goals.
Samantha was asking about in-person shuttle runs. It keeps scrolling, so I keep losing questions.
Yeah. I'm writing some down.
So Samantha, I would say just keep looking at our website and our upcoming events, and anything that we're doing with regard to any fitness testing, or sometimes there's some prep practice sessions and different things like that. It'll be listed on our upcoming events. So keep track of that, and that's, I guess, the best I can tell you, because I'm not sure of any coming anytime soon. How long is typical hiring process from application? Sorry.
Go ahead.
From application to offer of employment, it's roughly 3 to 6 months. No firm timelines associated with that, because depending on a lot of different factors, there's a lot of different moving parts. Some pieces may take a little bit longer than others, but usually somewhere between 3 to 6 months.
The auxiliary process and the cadet process are somewhat similar to the frontline process. So it is a fantastic experience. So just like you're asking here about those processes, what a great way to develop into the frontline process is by going through those development programs. It's saying, are you directly hired through those programs? No, you do have to apply to be on the front line, but the development that you get through those programs. If I look on the 10 areas of assessment, you can hit check marks in all of those areas if you're in one of those development programs, really. And again, just go to our website and you'll also be able to find those 10 areas of assessment. It'd be hard for us to get into all of that within the hour, but it's not anything hidden. It's there and available for you. And Sydney, I've seen that you love coming to the sessions because they're motivating. You also motivate us. It's super exciting, right? When we see you successful, we get excited and happy as well. So I'm happy you're here and motivated. And that's what we're here for. So please, if you have any questions, let us know how we can help you.
I love motivating people and being motivated myself. It's so great. How can I have a ride-along experience? Well, so some detachments will do ride-alongs, some won't. My best advice to you would be to contact your closest detachment, speak with the administrative staff there, ask them if there are any officers at the detachment who are willing to do ride-alongs, and then ask to be put in contact with one of those officers. There's a lot of officers that are completely willing, and then there's a process. You have to sign a waiver and different things like that. But there are many officers in many detachments that are happy doing ride-alongs because there's a ton of value in it, right? So again, reach out to your closest detachment, speak with the admin staff there, and they will help you start getting into that, going in that direction. Somebody's asking if they get paid once they start at OPC. Where did it keeps popping down? Oh, once we begin work at detachment. So Sydney's asking if our recruits get paid once they go to OPC or when they go to their detachment and start actual work. So once you get hired and attend the PPA, that's when you'll start getting paid. So you're paid for your training with the OPP through the Provincial Police Academy, through OPC, back to the Provincial Police Academy, and then out to your detachment. You'll be getting paid the entire time.
We're being asked about how many we are hiring in 2024. So go ahead.
So I would say
approximately.
Yeah. So things have changed a little bit. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around the changes that have come. So they're proposing 4 intakes for 2024 as opposed to the 3 that we currently have been running. So how that exactly is going to roll out, there's going to be an online portion added, and then there will be a little bit less time at OPC. So there's some changes in the works, and I don't want to misspeak, and I don't want to lead anybody astray. So I would say stay tuned to things like this as things develop a little bit further and we have more information. We'll be able to share that a little bit better. But they are proposing 4 intakes next year, and how many per intake? Well, we've been trying to fill 135 seats 3 times a year. So I'm not sure if it'll be 4 out of 135, or maybe we'll bring that down just a little bit. But I would say we're probably in the over 400 range for next
plus
year.
Experienced officers, plus cadets, plus auxiliaries. Listen too, if you're going into post-secondary and you have a few years in school, really consider those programs for cadet and auxiliary. It allows you to commit a few years into programs that you can really develop while you're in school. Some of your programs require volunteer work and those kinds of things also. So what a great way to get that additional life skills, volunteer time, ongoing learning through the OPP and these programs. Volunteer fire was just asked as well if that's good volunteer. Super solid volunteer work. So thank you for doing it. And it's absolutely accepted as volunteer. And again, you're hitting a lot of those boxes with ongoing education, training, and those kinds of things as well.
Tom is asking what certifications stand out to a recruiter. That's not an easy question to answer, Tom. I like to see a variety of different things, and that's not saying that each person has to have a variety. You can have your niche and have a bunch of different certifications and training in that area. I just like to see that people value continuous learning. That's really what I like to see. I think it's healthy for us, and it shows that you're invested in constantly trying to evolve and develop as a person and in whatever field you're currently in or whatever volunteer that you're currently doing. I think it's really important. So there's not a really good answer to that, unfortunately, Tom. But there's all kinds of, and when you think about our 10 areas of assessment, like any certifications that you're looking at getting it's going to be highlighted in your education, right? And we're going to see that, and we're going to value that. It's going to be highlighted depending on the certification. If it's something, let's say it's our Be the Bridge Challenge or our Inclusion Insights or our Diversity Challenge. If there's something like that, then we'll see it in your lifestyle and life experience when you start answering questions about our Indigenous communities in Ontario and what your knowledge is on those things, right? So depending on the certification, it's really going to highlight your areas of assessment in different areas, if that makes sense. So be diverse, keep learning, and make sure that you're giving yourself credit for all of the little courses and little certifications that you get.
It's true. We have candidates that come in with like extensive mental health training, right? We have candidates that come in with wilderness training. Like there's one extreme to the other. None of you are the same. And we need every kind of person and every kind of background, every kind of culture, every kind of skill. We're working for a province. So So definitely do what you love doing and do it well, and show us that you're teachable and trainable.
It's funny, as we were talking about like what kind of things that what direction we wanted the AMA to go in today, Renee, we talked a little bit about interviewing, and Morgan has a question about looking for the consensus on well-kept groomed facial hair during the interview process, right? So we talked a little bit about this earlier, Renee and I, and like, what should your interview look like? Like, what kind of an attitude should you bring to your interview? So I'll tell you a personal story. So, like I said, I was just in a competition for another position within the OPP, not successful. But part of what I did, I had a beard for like a year and a half. And I actually shaved my beard for my interview because that was the most professional image that I felt I could present, right? So it's kind of up to each individual, but you have to think about, like, this is you're applying for a position as a professional police officer, right? How do I best represent myself, and what kind of an image am I going to portray of myself, right? And again, think about first impressions. You can't make a second first impression, right? So how are you dressed? Is it like, are you wearing a dress shirt but it's on, and again, I'm not saying anything is better than anything else. I'm leaving it completely up to you, as the audience, to figure out what you think is right. But I know what I would do, you know, suit, tie, pants, shoes, like different things. Like we interview virtually, and it's interesting to see that, like, you know, if somebody asks, can we take a break, I need to go to the washroom, and they're what they're wearing on the bottom half as they get up and go to the bathroom doesn't match what they're showing on their top half, right? Little things like that make an impression. So I would say be conscious of that, and don't cut corners on looking and being professional. Think about your environment. Think about what's behind you, right? Like, my office isn't awesome, so I've blurred it a little bit so that you can't see my calendar here and different things. But if I was at home, I might have like a fake background, or I might have it on a neutral wall so that there's nothing in the background. So my bed isn't there, and you know, my fridge and the leftover food on my counter and different things like that. So you have to think about the way you present yourself, right? And how professional that comes across. And how you speak is again, that's another completely different consideration, right? Yes sir, no sir. Like, I'm not a sir, and I'm pretty relaxed, but it is a professional interview, and you still have to have a degree of professionalism. Because when we look at that and we think, like, this person is completely not professional in an interview, how are they going to interact with the public, and how are they going to represent the OPP, right? So I'm not saying yes sir, no sir, but definitely, you know, like Mr. Mills, Sergeant Mills, if you don't know how to address your recruiter, like, ask them, good day sir, like, how would you like to be addressed? Right, well, Sergeant Mills is fine for today. Okay, thank you very much. And then Sergeant Mills, like, shouldn't be like, oh hey Dan, how's it going, right? Like, how professional does that come across, right? So consider those things, I would say, as far as, and then for the facial hair thing, like, you make your decision, but look professional, look clean. Not saying that you shouldn't have facial hair, but look professional, look clean.
All very good points. Just putting some time and thought ahead of time, right? Knowing that's something that you're gonna have to always do anyways, is think ahead and be prepared. All right. So we have an officer on here from New Zealand. It's pretty neat.
I love New Zealand. I went to New Zealand in 2017. Who is it? What is their...
He or she, I'm not sure. But they're asking, I don't know. They're asking if we look at their experience, and let me tell you, bring that experience. Tell us your stories. We want to hear it. Fantastic.
Yeah, I love New Zealand. Curious to know where you're from, where you're
their
working.
Culture, what it's like to police there. So
was it Sachet? I competed in Auckland. I did a whole tour of not a whole tour of the North Island, but down to did the trip down to Wellington. Spent a lot of time in the South Island. Really enjoyed New Zealand. So love your country.
There you go. So we do ask for your work history, the entire work history. Do the best you can. There's a few questions on this in the chat, so I'll just cover it all. When filling in your information, you fill it into the best of your knowledge, getting all the resources you can to fill it in. If there's something you can't fill in, just make sure you put something in there like unknown or not available, so at least we know that you've paid attention to that part and it's not just missing. But really just do your best to fill in the paperwork. More detail, the better. We pay attention to detail. So your applications should be filled out the best you can. And there is a checklist there. So please pay attention to the checklist and put everything in order. Have somebody review your application and look at it again, and then submit it so that we're not missing any information. If it asks for addresses, phone numbers, please put in addresses and phone numbers. Don't leave things blank.
Yes. What Renee said, exactly. So Thomas is considering coming up north, Renee. I feel like Northwest is probably his best bet.
I beg to differ.
But yeah. So how does the OPP help with moving, etc.? Unfortunately, Thomas, the move is kind of on you. Although if you're going to a duration posting, the OPP will give you $2,000 to help with the move, but that's only for recruits who are going to duration postings. Fitzroy's asking about shift schedules for frontline officers. It varies from detachment to detachment. So based on like the detachment staffing model, as well as the members there, they have meetings, they figure out what works best for them, and they all agree, and then that's the schedule that they work. Usually 12-hour shifts. Not always, but usually.
We have a question here about having a young family and applying to the OPP and being moved around and those kinds of things. So again, like we said earlier, every candidate coming in has different circumstances coming in to the process. You do get to pick 6 preferred detachment locations, and we will do our very best to support those. Can we always? No, but we're pretty good at it, I would say. But coming through your process, when you have the opportunity through interview and whatnot, express yourself, express your needs, and just make sure we're aware of you and your family and your dynamics. We have candidates that are so flexible and able to go anywhere. And they look forward to leaving that wide open and just going with wherever the organization needs them. But we do have other candidates that do have special needs for their family, for their situations and that kind of stuff. But if we know them, at least we can work with it and do our best to support you. We would like to have happy officers in the province of Ontario. So please just express yourself when you're going through the process so we know what your needs are.
Jesse Peltier is telling me I need some Christmas decorations for my office.
In December.
I have a rule. Actually, I have a rule. No Christmas decorations until after November 11th. Okay. Out of respect, that's my personal rule. So maybe after Jesse, maybe after November 11th, I'll throw up a few. Somebody's asking Renee, where was it? We get so many questions. They get all.
They're moving on us.
Somebody's asking about someone who's interested in OPP, RCMP, and Sûreté de Quebec. All have great opportunities. What makes the OPP stand out? So I'll give you my answer first, and then you can maybe throw in a few comments. I think just the diversity of different opportunities within the organization. So that's one big thing. Really, really, once you start your career and you get a little bit of experience, you can direct your career any way that you really want to go, in what you're interested in, whether it's crime, whether it's the emergency response team, maybe you're into traffic, right? Whatever really piques your interest, you can follow that path, and then make it a career that you really love doing. And when you love doing what you're doing, then it's really not work for you, right? And the other thing is the support, as far as like our mental health and stuff. Like, it's come leaps and bounds, and it's still not perfect and still evolving and still getting better, but the support that the organization provides its members, from a mental health perspective, I think is probably, you know, I think it's probably in the industry, it's probably stands above most other agencies in the industry. Renee.
I would say I do mirror all of that and embrace the fact that you can work for a province, and like Dan said, the opportunities in the OPP. At any point, if you feel unhappy, you have options within the organization to find new ways to learn and develop. It's endless opportunities, but even personally. So if you're really going to consider, where you want to work, put your personal life in there too. Where do you have family and supports, and what are you planning for your future that way? So consider the whole picture, the professional opportunities, and if it suits your personal life as well. And ask questions. If you know OPP officers, please ask them the questions that you have, and just come in fully informed. But get informed about the province. And remember, we place you at your first location only. After that, your path is yours. So we're not going to move you around. You get to choose your path in the OPP once you're hired, which again, personally and professionally, is such an asset working for this organization.
There's been a couple people asking about volunteering. So volunteering is one of those things that often comes up in these conversations, and like, people want to know how much should they be doing, right? And then they talk about, like, life gets in the way, and like working 12-hour shifts and commuting, and like the opportunity to have, to be able to give your time sometimes is not there, right? And I think we get that. And what I would say about volunteering, often when I ask people why they want to be a police officer, they say they want to have a meaningful impact in their community, and answers to that effect, right? Which is great. That's what we're looking for. But how are you doing that now? So I get that. Like, I look at volunteering and community service as a bit of a, like, it's there's an ebb and a flow to that part of your life, right? I'm doing a lot of community volunteering, because I have the ability to. I have the time to do that, right? My kids have gotten to an age where, like, they're less dependent on me, right? And I can sometimes take them with me when I'm doing different things, right? So it works for me now. But I can tell you, 5 years ago, I wasn't doing a lot of volunteering because my commitments to my kids and my work and my family, and like, it wasn't working for me, right? So there is a bit of an ebb and flow to volunteering, but there should be some type of a history there of, commitment to the community. And what does that look like? I don't know. It really does depend on you. But if you're not volunteering, can you explain to me why you're not volunteering? And does it make sense? Right? Like, does that make sense? And especially if you've had a history, and you can say, it is important to me and I've done it for a long time, I just can't right now because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, that makes sense to me, right? I had a fellow I interviewed once who I actually kind of called him on his volunteer time and was like, yeah, you're not doing much as far as like community involvement. And he's like, well, I know, but I have done some in the past, but my kids are 3 and 1, and I have I don't even have time to sleep, let alone volunteer. So what I do is I have a payroll deduction to the United Way that comes off my pay, because I can't give my time. So I'm giving a little bit of money, right? That's the best I can do right now. And I was like, okay, well, okay, that's a pretty good explanation. So, and again, everybody's situation is different. I had a person I interviewed who had a family member who was dealing with cancer and had a bunch of chemo therapy that they were going through, and the applicant was the person who was their primary caregiver and taking them to their appointments and different things like that. So, again, is that community service? Maybe I would consider that as community service, because you're doing something for other people or somebody else, not yourself, right? So um, it might ebb and flow, but have an explanation as if you're not, why aren't you? And are you planning to get back into it? Do you have a history of it?
Ask yourself something that you want to do or learn about, and do community service in that. Like, don't go do it and say, I have to do this. Then don't do it. Go and do something that makes you feel good and that you want to be a part of. Your time is super valuable, but you can also get involved in things you really enjoy.
King is asking if 22 is too young to apply to be an officer. 18s are minimum,
There's a lot of age questions.
and I would say 18s are minimum, and that's really the only age that we look at. With and the one thing that I will say about age, like, we can't discriminate based on age, and we
We
don't.
don't.
But the one thing I will say about age is usually with age comes experience, and um, it gives people the opportunity to develop in areas, right? Doesn't mean you can't do that at a young age. You just need to be like on top of it at a younger age, so you can set yourself up to develop in a lot of areas, right? So again, 22 is not too young. I would say if you feel like you're a competitive 22-year-old, that and you have, solid development in all our areas of assessment, then absolutely pull the trigger and apply. Absolutely.
That's funny.
It's so hard to pick a question, and I know we're not going to get to everybody's questions, and I that's one thing I dislike about doing these things.
Okay. So college versus university versus anything else. Again, take courses that you're passionate about and try to get wonderful grades. That's the key. If you're passing with 50%, that's somewhat of a warning for us, because you have to get 75% to pass in the Ontario Police College. So we need to know confidently that you're going to be coming in and able to focus and reach those grades. Please work hard in any education that you're in. If you're struggling in school or having difficulty with that, you're going to have to figure out ways to show that you're teachable and trainable. Maybe take additional training and courses to show that you've come beyond that. There's different situations, by all means, but you do require a 75% minimum at our Ontario Police College.
Taryn is asking about advice for the LFI and the ECI interviews. My advice is just like, make notes on yourself in the areas that the best advice that I can give you is make notes on yourself in the 10 areas of assessment. Like those notes. So often in interviews, when a candidate is asked a question, they have to think about the question, they have to reflect, they have to look into their memory and provide an answer, right? If you've already done that and you've made notes on yourself, right, those answers should be close to the front of your mind, right? So again, it shows confidence when you're like, oh yeah, I know the answer to that. Yeah, I know the answer to that. I have a ready answer for that, right? And you don't have to know the questions to be able to prepare answers. You know that those 10 areas of
They're
assessment,
about you.
you're gonna, yeah, they're about you, and those are are areas that we're going to look at. So if you have information about yourself in those areas, that's handy. And if you've made notes, you can study those notes, right, up until the time of your interview, and it should all be readily available. So that is my advice on those things. And I would think about, like, I would think about is for the essential competency type questions, the like tell me about a time when type of questions. I would say, like, Google different competency based topics, and think of, like, let's say one is valuing diversity, for example, right? Okay, what is an example that I could use out of my life and my experience that I could speak to how I value diversity, right? And prepare that ahead of time, right? Just so you have an idea. So it's easy, so you don't have to think on the spot, right? I think that those are that's my best advice for how to tackle interviews. And relax, be honest. It's a conversation, right? It's about you, and nobody knows you better than you. So just have confidence in yourself.
Thank you, Cam. I agree. Do the diversity and inclusive challenges, and CPK, and also they're great additional learning opportunities. There's another question about being out of province being an issue to apply. No, we absolutely welcome out of province applications. We do outreach out of province as well. We interview virtually. Our processes are virtual. Your fitness is also on video. Um, Everybody is processed the same throughout. And I have to say, I've even interviewed in Barcelona when someone was on vacation. So we make it work. It's pretty neat to see what the opportunities are with virtual access now. So please do apply no matter where you are. And you can still reach all this information sessions and whatnot, again, are online. So you don't have to be at everything in person. If you have questions, definitely reach out. Come to these AMAs and ask them.
Austin's asking about speeding tickets and how long to wait until applying after receiving one. Speeding tickets aren't necessarily a deal breaker. Again, if it's racing, then that's another conversation. But we want to make sure that there's not a negative history of driving behavior. So 1 or 2 tickets, often people have those on their file. Some are historical, some are a little bit more recent. But again, not a deal breaker, but it's probably going to be part of a conversation that you're going to have with your recruiter for sure when you're interviewed.
It's asking about our process and how long it takes. I would say from the time that you apply, the reason we say to be competitive best is because our process is fairly quick. You can look at 2 months to 6 months, usually within that time frame, to do all of the process pieces. And to say that you hear back at a certain amount of time, we're very quick, but we don't put a time limit on it because it just depends where we're processing, what classes we're getting ready for, those kinds of things. But usually, once you submit your application, it's a pretty good flow of processing once you've started that by submitting the application.
I was laughing because Jesse has a comment about handlebar mustache for the interview. Would that be problematic or good vibes? As long as it looks clean and professional, Jesse, that's all I will say about that. It depends who your interviewer is too, I guess.
Do we have any advice or tips about dealing with stresses of the career that they can put into place prior to applying? Dan?
Well, glad you asked. Obviously, I think it's becoming more and more well known that, and not just in policing, but emergency services in general, there can be a little bit of a mental psychological health toll. Sometimes doesn't always happen, doesn't happen to everyone, right? But there is a bit of a risk there, just because of the nature of the work that we do. I would say just knowing that to start is your first step to managing anything that you'll experience in your career. Second step, I would say, would be if you get an offer of employment and you get hired, I would reach out to a psychologist and say, hey, listen, I'm starting this career in policing. I just want to get a baseline on kind of like what my mental health is like. I want to build a relationship with you so that if in the event that something, affects me in my career, I have somebody that I trust that I can talk to already, instead of trying to build that trust when you're not at your best, right? So those are kind of like my pieces of advice that I would give anybody who's kind of like working their way into this career.
Yes, a permanent resident can apply to the OPP. There's another question about finances and what we're looking for. We're looking for a level of responsibility, the ability to take care of yourself, to have priorities with your financial and fiscal management. So reasonable debt is normal, right? We do have school loans, we have houses, rent, those kinds of things, vehicles. Those are all normal things. Are you functioning with that? Are you able to put food on your table and take care of yourself? Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for.
Eduardo's asking about English as a second language. So our minimum requirement. Did you answer this already, Renee? No. Our minimum requirement is fluency in English. So I'm not sure about the levels of as far as like courses that you're taking for English as a second language. But again, I would have to defer to like, would you be considered fluent in English? That's because that's our minimum standard. And if you're not, then keep working toward that. And if you are, then go ahead and apply.
Okay.
Somebody's asking about Canadian Armed Forces. So Chris is asking about Canadian Armed Forces and the process for serving members and the transition to OPP. So the process is the same, Chris. First, thanks for your service. Second, the process is the same. The one thing, sometimes it takes a little bit longer with CAF applicants. And you will need your conduct to provide your conduct sheet on application as well. So sometimes that's what takes a little bit longer, those processes with the military.
Daniel, we have seen applicants in their 40s. We've seen applicants in their 50s. Absolutely, please do apply.
Somebody's asking about finding out why they're not successful. So we usually don't share like the details of like why an applicant or a candidate is not successful. Again, it's to protect the integrity of our process. And it's not because we don't want to provide that information. What I normally tell people who have been informed that they're not successful is like, and again, I hate defaulting always to the 10 areas of assessment, but like look at those areas of assessment. And usually when I have a conversation with people, like I'll ask them about their education. What does that look like? What does your driving look like? What does your leadership look like? What does your community service look like? What does your fitness look like? And usually during that conversation, people can figure out why they haven't been successful. Usually people can figure that out. So if you kind of do a little bit of self-reflection, honest self-reflection, you'll usually find the answer that you're looking for.
Are we allowed to have tattoos?
Yeah. Well, I wore a long sleeve today.
See that. Usually you can see them, but you can have tattoos. Yes.
There are I guess there are some kind of rules that go along with that though, as far as like what kind of things are portrayed in your tattoos, if there's anything offensive and different things like that. So there are some rules that go along with that, and where they are like different place, like we're not allowed to have them in different places. And again, it just comes down to like professionalism and looking professional, is the big thing. And that kind of goes with like everything, hair, facial hair, that type of stuff.
And G license is required for applying to be a provincial constable. You can have a G2 license for cadet applications because you are developing and you'd be getting that G license soon enough. So know that if you are applying for a cadet program position, you can have a G2.
Shane Jag is asking about, now I lost it. Okay, there it is. Is asking about in-person meeting with a recruiter, give an overview of oneself to determine areas of strength and what can be improved before making an application. I recommend this, actually. So I would talk to any police officers that you know and have this same conversation. I would reach out to maybe a detachment in your area and ask if there's a recruitment ambassador at that detachment and speak with them, because they have a lot of the same knowledge and information that we have. But I would definitely also, what email should they send? Is it uniformrecruitment@opp.ca they should email to get in touch with the recruiter? I think so, right? Yeah, so I would send an email to uniformrecruitment@opp.ca, and ask to be put in touch with a recruiter, and then they will forward your information on to one of us, and we will get in touch with you, and we can have that conversation.
I'll answer one more before we finish up today. It's asking about ongoing education once you're an officer. I can say that this career is nonstop ongoing education. You'll find yourself in classrooms. You'll find yourself in proactive training that you request and ask and sign up for. You'll find yourself in training that's mandatory for annual certifications. You will always be learning because legislations change, policies change. We're facing ongoing technical changes, new equipment, upgrades every day. So ongoing learning in this career happens nonstop. So be ready to embrace that. Be ready to adapt and embrace learning if you're planning to work for the OPP.
And with that, I think we're out of time.
Oh, there's so many more questions.
I know. Makes me sad that we don't get to answer them all. Again, thank you everyone for participating and being on here with us today. I love doing these. I don't like not being able to answer all of the questions that we get, but I would encourage you to, next time we run 1 in 2 weeks, get on again and throw your question on there, and hopefully they'll be able to get to it. Okay, so thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. Renee, thank you as always for all of your knowledge and insight.
You as well. Stay safe, everyone.
All right, everyone. Take care.